Friends, tonight we're diving into the kitchens, campfires, and ceremonies of Native American tribes in the Old West, where food was more than just fuel, it was survival, identity, and sometimes even a form of spiritual payment. Imagine meals that weren't only about filling your stomach, but about honoring tradition, sharing with the community, and connecting to the land in ways most of us can barely imagine today. That's exactly the flavor of history we're serving up in this episode. But before we slice into the story, let me hit you with a quick favor. If you're enjoying this journey through the past, take a second to hit that subscribe button, drop a like, and share this video with someone who loves history with a side of good food. Every time you do, it helps me cook up even more content just like this. Think of it as tossing a little extra wood on the fire so we can keep the stories burning bright. And here's where A comes in. A story, a culture, a community. These are the layers that make the Old West so endlessly fascinating. By joining in, you're not just watching another video, you're helping build a campfire circle where history comes alive. So don't be shy, leave a comment, tell me what part of Native American food traditions surprised you most, or maybe even what you'd love to try if you had the chance. The more you engage, the more I can keep serving you dishes of the past that are rich, surprising, and unforgettable. So go ahead, subscribe, like, and share. Trust me, you don't want to miss the next course in this feast of history. Part 1, Dinner is Served Old West Edition. So picture this. You're a Native American in the Old West. Forget Uber Eats, forget your fridge. Your food supply is whatever Mother Nature decides to cough up that day. And here's the kicker. It wasn't just about not starving to death. Meals were full-on ceremonies, symbols of community, and sometimes, currency. Think of it as eating, praying, and paying your bills all at once. The foundation of the menu? The famous three sisters, corn, beans, and squash. These three weren't just food. They were the Beyonce, Kelly, and Michelle of the indigenous diet. Always together, always complementary, and frankly, the only stable girl group in history. Add in some meat if you're lucky enough to catch it, fruits if the season didn't betray you, and roots or greens if you knew what you were looking for. And here's the genius part. Meals were loaded with fat, protein, and carbs. Why? Because the Old West wasn't exactly a wellness retreat. It was brutal. Food wasn't just tasty. It was survival gear in edible form. Every bite was basically a nutritional shield against hunger, exhaustion, and, freezing to death. But before you imagine sad, gritty meals eaten in silence, stop right there. Food wasn't just functional, it was social glue. Sharing meals wasn't optional, it was culture. A feast meant strengthening bonds, celebrating victories, or just making it through another week without being eaten by a bear. In short, Native American dining was the original dinner party, except instead of posting photos of avocado toast, people bonded over dishes that could keep them alive for weeks. So yes, food was everything: survival, celebration, spirituality, and community. And that's just the appetizer. Stick around, because next we're getting into the specifics. And spoiler alert, corn is about to become the undisputed king of the kitchen. Part 2, Bread That Kneels in Soup. That dances. First up, the Navajo specialty, kneel down bread, or if you want to sound like you belong, Nestsidagoi. This was corn-based bread wrapped in husks, boiled or baked, and wait for it, shaped. Vaguely like someone kneeling. That's right, bread doing yoga before yoga was cool. The outside was crispy, the inside was soft, and the symbolism, priceless. This bread wasn't just eaten, it was gifted to medicine men as payment or handed to elders for blessings. Basically Venmo, but tastier. Meanwhile, the Chickasaw had pashofa, and if kneel-down bread was classy minimalism, pashofa was the giant potluck extravaganza. Made with cracked corn and pork, it was stirred for hours, and I mean hours. You'd Need special paddles, often handed down through generations just to keep the stuff from sticking. Imagine Grandma passing you not jewelry, not land, but a sacred soup-stirring stick. That's legacy, baby. And Pashofa wasn't just food, it had a whole festival attached. There was the Pashofa dance, where a medicine man would chant over a sick person to heal them while everyone else danced outside. Later, everyone feasted on the soup, and because healing takes energy, danced again. It was basically an ancient combination of medical insurance, dance marathon, and soup kitchen. So between kneeling bread and dancing soup, food in the Old West wasn't just fuel, it was an entire vibe. If Netflix existed back then, these dishes would have had their own reality shows. Part 3. Stews, Fry Bread, and Taco Ancestors. Now let's talk about a two, which is less of a single dish and more of a catch-all for stews, soups, and mush. Translation: if it could be boiled and spooned, it was a two. Early versions were made from rabbits, wild greens, squash, or potatoes. Later, when herding became a thing, goat, sheep, and cow meat found their way into the pot. One popular variation, mutton a two, involves sautéing the meat first before throwing it into boiling water with vegetables. Served with bread or tortillas, it was comfort food with serious stamina. Then came the celebrity dish of Native American cuisine, fry bread. If food were pop stars, fry bread would be Taylor Swift. It's simple: flour, water, shortening, fried until golden, but endlessly versatile. You could load it with beans, cheese, and veggies, and boom, you basically invented tacos. Or drizzle honey on top for dessert. It was survival food born from government rations on poor reservation land, but instead of fading, it became an icon. To this day, fry bread is both beloved and controversial, kind of like every food trend ever. Together, I too and fry bread tell us something important. Native Americans didn't just survive, they innovated. They took whatever scraps or challenges came their way and turned them into hearty, delicious meals. Honestly, they'd crush it on MasterChef, Old West Edition. Part 4. Energy bars, acorn stew, and ancient beer enter wasna, also known as pemmican. Picture beef jerky, trail mix, and a protein bar having a baby. Dried meat, dried berries, and fat were mixed together into a calorie-dense bomb that could keep warriors going for days. Sioux legend said wasna was practically the lifeblood of the people, and honestly, it makes sense. It was the Red Bull of the plains, minus the jittery crash afterward. Meanwhile, in California, the Luiseno and Miwok tribes were cooking up we wish, an acorn stew. Acorns, those little nut squirrels hoard, except here they were turned into superfood. Collected each autumn, ground into flour, leached of bitterness, and cooked into a mush, they provided essential fats, carbs, vitamins, and protein. Botanists later tried it and called it flat but nutty, which, to be fair, is how I'd describe myself before coffee. And if you thought the Old West was dry, think again. Some Pueblo tribes were brewing a corn-based beer 800 years ago. Later, the Apache adopted it as Tizwin, a lightly fermented corn or cactus drink. Now, white historians love to talk about a Tizwin drunks, but tribal members insist that was exaggerated, because Tizwin's alcohol content was so low, you'd need barrels to even feel tipsy. Most of those so-called drunks, tequila was probably involved. So there you have it. Native Americans were inventing protein bars, experimenting with nutty superfoods, and casually brewing beer centuries before Whole Foods caught on. Part 5. Paper bread and nut soup. Moving along, let's stop by the Hopi kitchens where the famous Pecky was made. Pecky was paper-thin cornbread, usually blue or red corn mixed with ash and water, then spread by hand onto hot stones. The result? A delicate sheet of bread so thin it made crepes look chunky. Women spent years mastering the art, and the Pecky stone itself was sacred equipment. Think of it like the Michelin-starred skillet of its time. The bread could be rolled, folded, or served flat alongside meals. And yes, it took insane skill. to make it without burning half your fingers off. Meanwhile, the Cherokee gave us canucci or hickory nut soup. They'd collect nuts, dry them, grind them into balls, and then simmer those in boiling water with hominy. Sweeteners like sugar or honey could be added if available. Think of it as a nutty, hearty fall soup, except instead of pumpkin spice. Latte season, it was please let me survive winter season. Hickory was so important that the tree basically doubled as a grocery store and pharmacy. So, between paper bread that required Jedi-like control and nut soup that kept families full through hard months, it's clear. Native American food wasn't just about surviving. It was also about refining food into an art form. Part 6. Sweet choke cherries and final thoughts. Finally dessert, sort of. The Sioux made wajapa, a thick pudding-like dish of choke cherries, flour, and sugar. Sweet but not considered dessert, wajapa was eaten with fry bread or served at ceremonies and special gatherings. It was comfort food, community food, and medicine food all in one. Choke cherries were prized not just for flavor, but for their healing properties. Basically, wojapa was the Old West version of superfood smoothies, except it actually tasted good. So let's recap. Native Americans of the Old West weren't just living off scraps. They were culinary innovators. They made yoga-shaped bread, marathon soups, trail-mix protein bars, ancient beer, paper-thin bread, nut soups, and choke cherry puddings. Their food wasn't just about staying alive. It was about identity, spirituality, community, and resilience. The next time you bite into a taco, down a protein bar, or sip craft beer, remember, indigenous chefs of the Old West were already doing it centuries earlier, without Instagram, without recipe books, and definitely without Gordon Ramsay yelling in their faces.